They say betrayal never comes from your enemies, and I know that now, deeper than I ever thought I would. My name's Eric Patterson, 42, husband, father, steady, the kind of man people might call boring if they're being polite. But I never needed flash. I needed real, and I thought I had it. Until last summer, when the past came knocking on our front door, wearing nostalgia like perfume. It started with a high school reunion. Class of '03. My wife, Dana, had been more excited about it than I'd seen her in a long time. She lit up when the invitation arrived, gold lettering on thick ivory cardstock. She laughed when she read the theme aloud. Back to the Future. It was cute, I'll admit. Retro music, old photos, cheap drinks, awkward dancing. The kind of event that turns everyone into a teenager again for one night. You coming with me? She asked, curling up beside me on the couch, resting her head on my chest. Nah, I said, rubbing slow circles on her shoulder. It's your thing. Go have fun. Take pictures. Come back with embarrassing stories. She grinned and kissed me, soft and quick. You sure? I nodded. I trusted her. Dana and I had been married 12 years. She was everything I wasn't. Fiery, spontaneous, a little unpredictable in the best ways. I was the planner, the anchor, the guy who handled logistics while she brought the magic. We balanced each other out, or at least I thought we did. The reunion was in her hometown, 2 hours away in a small city called Maple Grove. She booked a room for the weekend. Just in case I drink too much to drive, she said casually while packing. I didn't think twice. We kissed goodbye on Friday afternoon. She looked beautiful, wearing that flowy summer dress she always said made her feel 20 again. Love you, she said, smiling wide. Love you more, I replied. That was the last moment things felt normal. She came back Sunday afternoon, sunglasses on inside the house. Tired, quiet, a little off. I chalked it up to the hangover. How was it? I asked. Good, she said, heading straight to the laundry room. Lots of laughs. Some people look exactly the same. Some didn't age so well. That was all she gave me. No stories. No photos. Nothing. Something in me stirred, just a whisper of doubt. But I pushed it down. Married people get tired. That's normal. I let it go. But the whisper didn't go away. It got louder in the days that followed. Dana kept texting more than usual, smiling at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. She stayed up late with her laptop, the light under the covers glowing long past midnight. And she started wearing makeup on days she used to spend in sweats. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to become that man, the paranoid husband. But sometimes your gut knows before your heart catches up. It all came crashing down one night when I couldn't sleep. I walked past the home office and saw her screen light up. She left it open, logged into some social media site I didn't recognize. A message thread. Just a name, Ty. My chest tightened. I clicked. The first message was from the day of the reunion. Can't believe you came. You look even better now than back then. She replied, you always knew how to say the wrong thing the right way. The rest of the thread was worse. Way worse. Flirtation. Inside jokes. Secrets. A hotel room. I didn't read it all. I didn't have to. My hands shook. My knees buckled. She hadn't just gone to reconnect with friends. She went to reconnect with him. Tyrell Carter, her old flame from high school. The guy she once said was a lesson, not a soulmate. Apparently, the lesson came back for a retest. I closed the laptop slowly, careful not to make sound. My heart pounded like it was trying to break out of my ribs. I went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water I didn't drink, and stared out the window into the dark, wondering when my life had become a lie. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. I needed time to think, to breathe, to figure out what came next. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, I watched Dana move around the kitchen like nothing was wrong. She made her usual oat milk latte, added a touch of cinnamon like always. Wore that same soft gray robe she'd had since our 3rd anniversary. She smiled at me. I smiled back. We didn't say much. I could feel the words crawling on my throat, but I swallowed them. Not yet. Not until I was ready to hear her lie to my face. I waited until she left for work, then I opened her laptop again. The thread with Ty was still there. She hadn't deleted it. Maybe she didn't think she needed to. Or maybe she thought I'd never look. Either way, I kept reading. Friday night was everything I didn't know I still needed. You still taste like trouble. My stomach turned. Then the photo. A blurry picture of the hotel room, her bare legs tangled in white sheets, a wine glass on the nightstand. No faces, just enough to kill something inside me. Ty had sent the last message. Tell me this doesn't have to end with the weekend. She hadn't replied. Yet, I closed the laptop, heart hammering against my ribs. I didn't want to explode. I wanted answers. I wanted to know why. What had changed? What was missing? Because if I'm being honest, I didn't see it coming. We weren't perfect. Who is? But we were solid. We laughed, we still kissed goodnight. We had date nights, shared bank accounts, watched dumb reality shows together. So how do you go from all that to sneaking around with someone who couldn't even keep a spot on the varsity basketball team? That afternoon, I left work early. I needed space. I drove to the park by the river where Dana and I used to go when we first started dating. Back then, we'd sit on the bench and talk for hours about everything and nothing. Now, I sat alone, staring at the water, trying to figure out what part of me she had stopped seeing, and what part of him she still remembered. I went home around 6. She was in the kitchen again, sautéing something in a pan, humming. I hated that it still sounded beautiful. I waited until she plated the food, waited until we sat down, and then I asked, "How was a reunion, really?" She looked up, fork halfway at her mouth. "It was fine." "Why? You see anyone interesting?" She shrugged. "A few old classmates. Nothing special." That was the moment. The one where the lie became real. I don't know why, but I wanted her to flinch, to hesitate, to give herself away. But she didn't. She met my eyes and lied like it cost her nothing. I nodded slowly and changed the subject. I needed more time, not to gather evidence. I already had that. What I needed was to get out of the fog I was in, because right then, I didn't know what hurt more, the fact that she'd done it, or the way she could pretend she hadn't. Over the next few days, I watched her closely. The extra care with her makeup, the new perfume, the way she locked her phone screen faster than usual. I wasn't looking for more proof. I was looking for a version of her I could still believe in. But that version didn't exist anymore. Late one night, I sent a message. Not to her. To him. Ty. I found his name through her contacts, tracked down his social page. He looked the same, older, a little heavier, but still wearing that same smug look from their yearbook photos. I didn't threaten him. I didn't curse. I just said, "I know. Stay away from her." He replied an hour later. "Too late for that. Maybe you should talk to your wife instead of messaging me." I stared at the screen for a long time before closing the app. He was right. So I waited until the next morning. Saturday. She was in the living room, folding laundry. I sat down across from her. Quiet. Measured. And I asked the one question I knew she'd try to dance around. "Did you sleep with him?" She froze. And for the first time in 12 years, I watched my wife break. She didn't answer right away. Her hands trembled slightly, still clutching a half-folded t-shirt like she hadn't heard me. But I knew she had. I repeated the question, slower this time, each word heavy with betrayal. "Did you sleep with him?" Dana sat back against the couch cushions like the air had been pulled from the room. Her mouth opened, then closed. A flicker of panic passed through her eyes. And in that flicker, I saw everything. I saw the guilt, the truth, the confirmation. She didn't deny it, didn't fumble out some half-baked excuse. She just stared at me, defeated. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she finally said, her voice small, breaking in places. "It was a mistake." I wanted to yell, to throw something, to make the weight in my chest spill out into the room and land at her feet. But I didn't. I just sat there, feeling like my skin didn't quite fit anymore. "How long?" I asked. "Just once," she said quickly, too quickly. "It was just that night. We reconnected, we drank, we talked about old times, and it just happened." I nodded slowly, trying to hold on to something solid. "Anything. And you didn't think I deserved to know?" She looked away, wiping at her eyes. I didn't want to destroy everything. I thought if I could just pretend it never happened, maybe it wouldn't matter. That was the part that did it. That sentence. Pretend it never happened. Like our marriage was something that could survive lies if they were buried deep enough. Like she thought I wouldn't notice the space growing between us. The way her laughter felt just a little too forced. Her kisses a little too quick. "Who was he to you?" I asked. Was it just about sex? She shook her head. It wasn't about that. It wasn't just that. He was my first everything. My first love. We were wild back then. Dumb and intense. He hurt me, and I swore I'd never go back. But when I saw him at the reunion, it was like stepping into a dream I didn't realize I still remembered. I felt like I was being erased in real time. 12 years of life together, shrinking behind one night in a hotel room. A dream she wanted more than the reality we built. So what now? I asked. What happens to us? She didn't answer. That silence was its own answer. I stood up, my hands clenched, trying to hold back the shaking. I don't even know who you are right now. Eric, I'm sorry, she said, rising too. I was stupid. I never meant to hurt you. You didn't just hurt me, I snapped. You betrayed me. You lied to my face. You came back into this house, slept in our bed, made coffee in our kitchen like everything was fine. Because I didn't know what else to do, she cried. I knew I couldn't undo it, and I didn't want to lose you. I stared at her, this woman I'd built a life with, and wondered how much of it had been real. How long she'd been pretending. How many smiles were covers. How many kisses were camouflage. I left the house that afternoon. I didn't slam the door. I didn't pack a bag. I just walked out and kept walking. Past the mailbox, down the block, into the noise of a world that didn't care that mine had just cracked in half. I found myself at a diner we used to go to years ago. Order coffee. Black. No cream, no sugar. Just bitterness. I sat at the booth where we once talked about baby names. I stared at the empty seat across from me and imagined her sitting there, laughing the way she used to before life, and time, and some man named Tyrell took her somewhere I couldn't follow. My phone buzzed. A message from her. Please come home. We need to talk. I didn't reply. I stayed in that booth until the coffee went cold and the waitress stopped asking if I want a refill. I needed to feel the pain, let it settle into my bones. I needed to understand that nothing was going back to how it was. That even if we try to fix it, some fractures never fully heal. Later that night, I drove. Not home, just around. Ended up parked in a church lot. Headlights off, silence thick. I sat with the weight of everything she'd said and everything she hadn't. I replayed it all over and over. Her voice, her face, the way she looked when she admitted it. And what haunted me most was that even in her regret, there was a piece of her that still held on to whatever she'd felt with him. I could see it. I knew it. She hadn't chosen him, but she hadn't fully let him go either. And maybe that's what cut the deepest. I wasn't just mourning what she did. I was mourning the version of us that died the moment she crossed that line. I knew I'd have to go back eventually. Knew I'd have to look her in the eye again and figure out whether this marriage could survive the wreckage. But that night, sitting in the dark with nothing but silence and a broken heart, all I could do was breathe. Try to stay upright. Try to believe there was a version of the future where I wasn't haunted by the ghost of a man she let back in. A man who got to touch what I thought was mine alone. I stayed out until the sky turned pale with morning. Then I drove home, parked in the driveway, and just stared at the front door for a long time. I wasn't sure what I'd find on the other side. I just knew nothing would ever be the same that I didn't go inside right away. I sat in the car, watching the morning light stretch across the lawn like it was trying to make sense of the mess I was walking back into. Our house looked the same from the outside. Quiet, suburban, the kind of place that doesn't look like heartbreak lives there. But inside, I knew the air had changed. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was a crime scene with no blood. I finally stepped out and walked up the front steps, the key in my hand heavier than usual. When I opened the door, I expected silence, but Dana was waiting on the couch, sitting stiff with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders like armor. Her eyes were swollen, and her face was pale in the way people look when sleep hasn't touched them all night. She didn't say anything when I walked in, just watched me like she was afraid I'd disappear if she blinked. I stood there for a second, not knowing where to put my anger or how to hold my grief. Then I walked past her and sat in the chair across the room. Distance felt necessary. I need the truth, I said, my voice low but steady. All of it. No more protecting my feelings. No more half answers. If we have any chance of moving forward, I need to know what I'm actually dealing with. Dana nodded slowly, pulling the blanket tighter around her. We messaged for a couple of weeks before the reunion. Just small talk at first. I didn't tell you because, I don't know, it felt harmless. He said he was coming into town. Asked if I'd be there too. I said yes. She paused like she was searching for the right version of the truth, the one that hurt least. I didn't interrupt. At the reunion, we talked more. It was late. The music was loud. I was drinking. I felt not like myself. Or maybe I felt too much like the version of me I used to be, the one I buried under responsibility and grocery lists and PDA meetings. He reminded me of who I used to be, and I let that feeling carry me into something I knew I'd regret. I stared at her, not with hatred, but with the kind of cold disbelief that only comes when someone you love turns into someone you don't recognize. So you planned it, I said. Not the sex, but the meeting, the messaging, the secrecy. That wasn't an accident. You opened the door and kept it open. She flinched, but didn't argue. That part stung more than anything. How willing she was to admit it now that she'd been caught. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, hands clasped together like I was in a war room, tried to negotiate a ceasefire. Did you want to be with him? Are you still talking to him? She shook her head fast. No, not since that night. I blocked his number, deleted everything. I swear, I wasn't sure if I believed her, but the desperation in her voice felt real. Why didn't you tell me after it happened? I asked. You had 100 chances. Why not just come clean? Her eyes filled again. Because I was a coward. I knew it would break you, and I didn't want to lose the life we built. I thought maybe if I kept it buried, it wouldn't count. I stood up and walked to the kitchen. I needed to move, to create space between me and the ache pressing down on my chest. I poured a glass of water with hands that barely held steady. It counts, Dana. It always counted. You don't get to decide when your betrayal becomes real. I heard her sob behind me, muffled, like she was trying not to make sound. I stayed facing the sink, watching the slow drip of the faucet, wondering if she was worth forgiving. I thought about our history, late-night drives, road trips to nowhere, the way she danced barefoot in the kitchen with a glass of wine and a crooked smile. I thought about the time I broke my ankle and she carried every load, literal and emotional, for 3 months without complaint. I thought about the little notes she used to leave in my lunch bag. And then I thought about her body tangled in a stranger's sheets, choosing someone else while I was home trusting her. Do you want to fix this? I asked, not turning around. Do you actually want to fight for this marriage? Or are you just sorry you got caught? Her voice cracked behind me. I want to fix it. I want us. I don't even recognize who I became that night, Eric. But I remember who I was before that. Who we were. I want to go back to that. I turned slowly and looked at her. There's no going back, Dana. There's only forward. And the road forward from betrayal is long and full of landmines. If we go down it, it won't be clean. It'll hurt. Every day. You sure you're ready for that? She stood and took a step toward me. I'll do whatever it takes. I believed she meant it, but I also knew people say that when they're drowning. Saying whatever it takes is easy when you're scared of losing everything. Doing it every day, consistently, with patience and humility, that's something else. That night, we didn't sleep in the same bed. I stayed in the guest room with the door closed and the light on, because darkness made my thoughts too loud. I lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering when the version of our marriage that I'd believed in had died. Was it the first message? The kiss? The hotel check-in? Or was it long before that? Years of unspoken disappointment, resentment layered under routine, loneliness disguised as comfort. Marriage isn't just love. It's choice. And at some point, she chose someone else. I hadn't decided yet if I could ever unknow that. But I knew one thing for sure. The man I was before that weekend. The version of me who believed loyalty was enough, who thought love could prevent betrayal. He was gone. What came next would be a reckoning. Not just between me and Dana, but between me and myself. The next morning came too fast. I hadn't slept more than an hour, and the light creeping through the blinds felt like a spotlight I didn't want. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, elbows on my knees, head in my hands, trying to figure out how to start a day that shouldn't have happened in the first place. In the kitchen, I heard her moving, quiet, careful like someone trying not to wake a baby or a man whose heart she cracked open. I didn't rush to join her. I brushed my teeth like it was a performance, stared at my own face in the mirror, and wondered when it had started looking so tired. Or maybe I was only now seeing what she saw, something worn, predictable, easy to walk away from. I shook the thought off. That wasn't fair. This wasn't about who I was or wasn't. This was about what she chose. While I walked into the kitchen, she was already dressed, makeup light, hair pulled back. She looked like herself again, but I didn't trust that version anymore. It was the mask I had seen too many times to believe in. "I made coffee," she said, voice soft. I nodded and poured a cup. We sat at the table like we were coworkers, not husband and wife. No small talk, just the scraping of spoons and the low hum of the refrigerator. Finally, I broke the silence. "We need help." She looked up, startled. "What kind of help?" "Therapy, counseling, mediation, something. Because if we try to fix this alone, we're going to destroy each other in the process." She nodded quickly, relief washing over her face like she hadn't dared hope I'd even consider working through this. "Yes, I'll find someone. I'll book whatever. I'm in." I sipped the coffee, barely tasting it. "Good. But this doesn't mean we're okay. It just means I'm not walking away. Not yet." She swallowed hard and nodded again. "I understand. I didn't want her gratitude. I didn't want her relief. I wanted my life back, and I knew I'd never get it." That realization sat heavier than anything she'd said the day before. There's a grief that comes with betrayal that no one prepares you for. Not just the pain of what happened, but the mourning of what will never be again. Even if we stayed married, we'd never be the same. And in some way, neither would I. We started therapy 2 weeks later. A quiet office in a neighboring town, where the receptionist smiled too much and the water cooler gurgled every 10 minutes like it was trying to fill the silence. Our therapist was a woman named Julia, mid-40s, sharp eyes, soft tone. She didn't ask for sides. She asked for stories. "Tell me what you miss about each other," she said in one of the early sessions. Dana looked at me first. "I miss how safe I felt with you. Like nothing could shake us. Like you were the one person in the world who saw me completely." I clenched my jaw. That's what made it worse, knowing I had given her that feeling, and she still went elsewhere. I spoke next. "I miss trusting you. Without question. Without needing to." Julia nodded, not reacting too much, just letting the truth live in the air between us. "What are you both afraid of?" Dana didn't hesitate. "That he'll never forgive me. That he'll stay, but never come back fully." My answer took longer. "I'm afraid that if I do forgive her, I'll be betraying myself. That I'll wake up years from now and still feel like a fool." These are the things we never said at home, not without anger, not without interruption. In that room, it was different. Honest. Raw. Bleeding without the mess. Dana kept her promise. She stopped drinking, changed her number, deleted every social account where time might have been able to reach her. She gave me passwords, full access, offered her phone without being asked. She was trying, and I saw that. But healing isn't about trying. It's about time. It's about what you do after the trying gets exhausting. It's about whether your effort survives your guilt. Some nights, we sat on opposite ends of the couch watching shows we used to enjoy, pretending we were just tired instead of broken. Other nights, I'd find her crying in the shower, thinking I couldn't hear. And there were nights I woke up gasping, heart pounding, a dream of them together still fresh in my head. That's the thing no one tells you about betrayal. It's not a moment. It's a million aftershocks. Every text she sends that makes you wonder. Every long glance out the window that makes you question what she's thinking about. Every compliment that feels like it's trying to patch a hole that hasn't stopped bleeding. I started seeing a separate therapist on my own. I needed space to speak without worrying about her reaction. And in those sessions, I admitted something that scared me. I missed her, even in all the pain. I missed the sound of her laugh in the morning, the way she teased me when I burned the eggs, the little notes she used to leave in my gym bag. But I didn't know if I missed her or just the version of us that existed before the reunion. My therapist said that was normal, that I was grieving not just a betrayal, but the death of certainty. The loss of the unspoken belief that love alone could protect you. One night, I came home late from work. She was sitting on the floor in the bedroom, photo albums spread out like a crime scene. High school pictures, wedding photos, the birth of our daughter, her first day of kindergarten. That beach trip where Dana wore that straw hat that kept blowing off her head. I don't expect you to forget, she said when she noticed me. I just want you to remember, too. I didn't answer. I sat down beside her and picked up a photo of us dancing at our wedding, her head against my chest, eyes closed like nothing in the world could reach us. And I hated that I didn't know if that memory still belonged to me. I put the photo back and looked at her. I don't hate you, I said, but I'm still angry, and I don't know when I'll stop being angry. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I'll wait, as long as it takes. That was the difference. Before, she ran from the consequences. Now, she was standing in them with me. And maybe, just maybe, that mattered. Maybe that was the beginning of something else. Not what we had, but what we might still build. If we were both willing to bleed for IT, that IT was around the 4th month of therapy when I finally said the words I'd been circling since that night in the guest room. I don't trust you. I said it flatly, without rage, without venom, just the truth sitting between us like an unwanted guest who refused to leave. Dana nodded. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just said, I know. And that honesty was harder to swallow than any apology. Because it wasn't just about the cheating anymore. It was about the erosion, the way one decision pulled at every thread, unraveling everything we knit together over 12 years. Trust wasn't something you patched. It was something you rebuilt from scratch. And even then, you'd always see the seams. But we kept going. We showed up to therapy every week. We sat across from each other and told the unflinching truth. We talked about the good years, and we talked about the cracks, how parenthood changed us, how routine became a replacement for intimacy, how little resentments turned into walls. She admitted to loneliness, to feeling invisible in a life that looked perfect on paper. I admitted to withdrawal, to shutting down instead of opening up, to avoiding conflict because I thought peace was the same as love. There were days I wanted to leave, mornings where I looked at her and didn't see my wife, just the woman who broke me. Nights where her hand reached for mine, and I flinched without meaning to. But I didn't leave. And not because I was too weak to, but because some part of me, small, stubborn, buried under rubble, still believed there was something worth saving. We made rules. Hard ones. No contact with him, ever. Total transparency. Phones, calendars, locations. We talked before therapy, after therapy. We set up check-ins. We gave each other space when it was needed and closeness when it wasn't deserved. We stopped trying to feel normal and started trying to feel honest. And slowly, something shifted. Not forgiveness. That takes longer. But something. I remember one morning in particular. Late February. A snowstorm had rolled in overnight. Schools were closed. Roads slick with ice. We were in the kitchen making breakfast for our daughter. Pancakes because snow days meant sugar and cartoons and syrup-sticky fingers. Dana was humming to herself, wearing that old hoodie from college that had holes in the sleeves. Our daughter was on a stool by the counter, flipping pancakes with all the confidence of a 5-star chef. And for a brief second, I saw my family again. Not the broken pieces, but the picture. The life we built. The kind I used to dream about when I was 25 and didn't know what the word marriage really meant. That second was fleeting, but real. And it reminded me why I was still there. Because I wasn't fighting for perfection. I was fighting for the parts of us that still felt like home. A few weeks later, I got a message. Not from her. From him. Ty. He reached out through some throwaway account. Said he just wanted to talk. That he never meant to cause harm. That he hoped I could find peace. I read it 3 times. I didn't reply. I showed Dana. Her face turned pale, hands shaking as she blocked and deleted it in front of me without saying a word. He doesn't exist anymore, she said. Not in our world. And maybe that was the first time I fully believed she meant it. Trust is funny like that. It doesn't return in a grand gesture. It creeps back in, slow and unsure, through the quiet consistency of showing up. And she was showing up. Day after day. No excuses. No defensiveness. Just effort. Real effort. Some nights, we talked for hours like we used to before marriage became logistics and parenting became our only language. We laughed again. Tentative at first, then easier. We held each other without words. Sometimes with tears. sometimes in silence. She started writing letters to me. Not emails. Handwritten notes. Some long, some just a few lines. I thought of you when I heard this song today. You look tired this morning. I hope you know I see how hard you're trying. I miss the way we used to dance in the kitchen. I hope we could do that again someday. I kept every one of them in a drawer beside the bed. Not because I've forgiven her, but because I wanted to remember the work she was doing. The woman she was trying to be. We weren't healed. Not by a long shot. There were still landmines. The smell of a hotel room on TV. A high school reunion mentioned in a commercial. A name, too, close to his. But we were surviving the explosions together now, not hiding from them. One afternoon, during therapy, Julia asked, "Do you love her?" I didn't answer right away. Dana looked down at her hands, bracing. I looked at her, the lines near her eyes, the scar on her wrist from that time. She slipped while cooking, the way she always tucked her hair behind her ears when she was nervous. "Yes," I finally said, "but it's a different kind of love now. It's heavier. It knows too much." Dana looked up, her eyes wet. "I'll carry it," she said. "All of it." That night, we danced in the kitchen. No music, just us, barefoot on the tile, swaying to a rhythm that had nothing to do with forgiveness and everything to do with hope. Because healing isn't linear. It's not a straight path from pain to peace. It's a loop, a spiral, a storm you walk through holding hands with the same person who brought the rain. But if you can survive it, if you can both look at the wreckage and say we're not done, then maybe, just maybe, you build something stronger than what came before. Something forged in fire. Something earned. Something real. By summer, the air between us had changed. It wasn't light. Not yet. But it was less heavy. We weren't dragging the weight of the affair every minute of the day anymore. Some days we could even forget it for a few hours. We laughed more. Held hands in public again. Our daughter started noticing it too. She didn't ask questions, but she stopped hovering when we were in the same room. Kids know more than they ever say. They feel the shift in the air. And something had shifted, but I still had nights where it crept back in. A scent, a phrase, a dream where I walk into that hotel room and see them together and wake up sweating, heart racing, fists clenched around sheets like they were ropes. It's hard to explain to someone who hasn't been betrayed how even silence can trigger a memory. It doesn't need to be dramatic. The pain is quiet, and sometimes it shows up when you least expect it. Like one night in June when we went to a barbecue with friends, people who didn't know, people who still saw us as the perfect couple, who joked about how we still looked at each other like we were teenagers. Dana smiled through it, laughing and brushing her hand against mine like nothing had ever happened. And for a second, I resented her. Not because she was happy, but because I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to be that free again. That unburdened. That naive. When we got home, I said nothing. Just sat on the porch, a beer in my hand, staring out at the quiet street while she put our daughter to bed. When she came out, she didn't say anything at first. Just sat beside me. Then, softly, she asked, "Was it hard tonight?" I didn't lie. "Yeah." She nodded slowly. "Me too." And just like that, the resentment faded. Because the truth is, she wasn't unburdened. She carried it every day, same as me, just in a different way. Hers was guilt. Mine was grief. But we were both walking with a limp. That night, she told me something I'd never heard before. "I kept waiting for you to leave," she said. "Even after therapy started. Even when you said you'd stay. I thought one day I'd come home and your key wouldn't work anymore." I looked at her, really looked at her. Her eyes were tired but not hollow. Her voice was steady but soft. "And now?" I asked. "Now," she said, "I wake up every morning grateful you didn't." That word, grateful, landed in a place deeper than forgiveness. Because it wasn't a request. It was a recognition. She knew what it cost for me to still be here, to still choose her. And I knew what it cost her to keep showing up for a man who looked at her through the lens of her worst mistake. That kind of mutual choosing, it's not romantic. It's not flowers or date nights or grand gestures. It's a quiet, painful, consistent decision. And we were making it. One Tuesday, we got in the car and drove 2 hours back to the town where the reunion happened. I hadn't been there since college. The roads were the same, the strip malls dull and familiar. She said she wanted to show me something. At first I resisted. Part of me didn't want to breathe the same air that betrayal had happened in, but part of me wanted to reclaim it. So I said yes. She drove. I watched her hands on the wheel, the way she tapped the steering wheel with her thumb in rhythm to a song she barely hummed. When we got into town, she didn't go to the hotel. She went to the school, her old high school, the place where it all started. We parked. It was closed, gates up, parking lot mostly empty except for some summer maintenance trucks. "This is where I met him," she said quietly. "The first time, sophomore year. We were both in detention for mouthing off in class. I thought he was dangerous. That excited me. And for a while, I let that version of me define who I thought I was supposed to be. She looked at me, and then I met you, and I saw a different version of myself. Someone steadier, kinder, someone I actually liked. But sometimes the old versions come knocking, and you forget which one you worked so hard to become." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to, because I understood. We all have ghosts. We all have chapters we close too fast or too messily. And sometimes they reopen themselves without our permission. She turned off the engine. We sat in silence, looking at the building. It was just bricks and glass, but it felt like a monument to the moment everything had changed. And then, quietly, she whispered, "I'm sorry again. Not just for what I did, but for the part of you it broke." I turned to her, my voice quieter than I expected. "And I'm sorry for the parts one ignored. The signs I didn't see. The distance I didn't close." That was the moment I realized something new. Not everything that broke between us had started with the affair. Some of it started long before. The misconnections, the assumptions, the comfort that turned into neglect. And maybe that didn't excuse what she did, but it explained the cracks in the foundation. We didn't stay long, just a few minutes. Then we drove away. But I felt different when we left. Not healed, but not haunted either. More like we had named the ghost and told it didn't live here anymore. That night, back home, she reached for me in bed. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't about making something up. It wasn't about guilt or obligation. It was soft, careful, and for the first time in nearly a year, I let myself respond without anger, without flashbacks, without seeing her as someone else's. And afterward, we didn't say anything. We just lay there, her head on my chest, my fingers tracing the curve of her shoulder like I was memorizing it all over again. And maybe I was. Because when someone breaks your heart, you don't just love them again. You relearn them. Carefully. Slowly. Not because you forget what they did, but because you remember who they still are underneath it. It's been a year. One full turn of the calendar since she packed that dress in her overnight bag, kissed me at the door, and walked out of our home thinking we were fine. 12 months since the reunion that fractured everything we thought was unbreakable. And I won't lie to you, some scars still itch. Sometimes I still see him in places he never was, still flinch at hotel keycards and movies, still feel my stomach twist when I hear the name Ty. That part doesn't just vanish, but it dulls, slowly, like waves smoothing the edges off a jagged rock. The pain reshapes itself into something quieter, something survivable. We're still here, not just existing in the same house, together, not as the people we used to be, but as two people who crawled through the wreckage and came out the other side with our hands still touching. We don't talk about the affair every day, but we don't pretend it never happened either. It lives with us like a storm we endured, something we survived, not something that defines us. It shows up in small ways, in how we communicate, in how we listen better now, not just waiting for our turn to talk, in how we apologize faster, forgive slower, and touch each other like we know what it's like to feel that closeness vanish. Sometimes I watch her when she doesn't know I'm looking, folding laundry, reading on the couch, singing under her breath in the car. I see the woman who hurt me, but I also see the woman who stayed, who fought, who chose the long, brutal path back instead of running. There's courage in that, a different kind of courage than the one we usually talk about. Not the courage to confess, but the courage to stay after the confession, to clean up the emotional blood without knowing if the person you hurt will ever look at you the same way again. And there's courage, too, in choosing not to walk away. People say forgiveness is strength, but they don't tell you how exhausting it is, how it breaks you down and remakes you over and over, How it's not a single moment, but 1,000 tiny choices to stay, to breathe, to trust again. I don't always feel strong. Some days I still feel like I'm limping. But every step forward is one we didn't think we'd take a year ago. We even went back to the same hotel. Not to punish her, not to punish myself, but because she said she wanted to overwrite the memory. "Let me make a new one," she whispered. So we drove there, hand in hand, checked into a different room, ate dinner downstairs, walked the halls where ghosts still lingered but didn't rule us. And that night, we talked until the sun came up. Not just about what happened, about who we used to be, who we became, who we're trying to be now. And it was quiet, gentle, no anger. Just two people admitting how fragile love can be when you stop tending to it, and how stubborn love becomes when you fight to keep it alive. I won't paint us as saints. We've said ugly things. We've broken down in each other's arms. We've slept back to back on nights when the silence between us felt like a canyon. But we kept waking up and trying again. And in that trying, something unexpected grew, a new kind of love. Not naive, not perfect, not built on a lie that love is bulletproof, but something more honest, more earned. The kind of love that looks you in the eye after seeing the worst of you and says, "I'm still here." We renewed our vows last week. Nothing big, just us, our daughter, and a quiet lake with trees that bent gently in the wind. She wore a simple white dress. I wore a gray suit. No guests, no band, just promises. Again, but different. This time, the vows weren't just about a future. They were about what we'd already endured, about the ruins we sifted through and the pieces we picked up together, about the forgiveness we fought for, the trust we stitched back together with trembling hands. I told her, "I can't promise I'll never hurt, but I promise I'll never hide my hurt from you again." She told me, "I can't erase what I did, but I can promise you'll never have to face pain alone again." And that was enough, more than enough. Later that night, our daughter, now 7, observant and quiet like me, crawled into bed between us. She looked at both of us and said, "You guys smile more now." That's when I knew. We made it. Not back to where we were, but forward. Somewhere new. Somewhere honest. This is not a story about a perfect marriage. It's a story about what happens when you refuse to let one night erase a lifetime. When you fight for the truth beneath the pain. When you choose love even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. So if you've been betrayed, if you're sitting in your own version of that guest room, staring at the ceiling wondering how it all fell apart, I won't tell you to stay. I won't tell you to go. But I will tell you this. Healing is possible. Not easy, not quick, but possible. And sometimes when two people choose it together, it creates something deeper than what came before. Something not just worth surviving, but worth living for.